Now all you really have to do in large part is pay attention online because people tell you what they like, what they don't like.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North, and today my guest is Marina Filippelli, CEO of Orsi. Marina, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You have a broad and varied background in marketing, entertainment industry, film, and TV, particularly in the communications industry, but you're now CEO of Orsi. Tell us a little bit about Orsi and what sets it apart in the marketplace.
So Orsi has been around for over 35 years now. We were one of the pioneer, independently owned Hispanic agencies. Our founders, Norma and Hector, came from Mexico City, and they saw an incredible opportunity to set themselves apart as being an independently owned agency focused on the Hispanic market that was really had a goal of making sure that corporate America spoke to Hispanics in language, in culture, and as respectfully as possible, considering that it was the first time really that Hispanics were starting to be communicated to in language in this country. So 35 years later, a lot has changed. We do, very different things than we did when the agency was founded, but some things haven't changed, which is really our deep respect for our community and making sure that we are bridging connections between brands and now multiple segments of the community. So we've expanded beyond Hispanic, Hispanic in terms of we do in language and in culture. So sometimes in English, sometimes in Spanish. And we also target other segments, whether it's multicultural segments like Asian and African-American or LGBTQ plus community, et cetera. And we're very interested in these days, kind of the intersectionality of it all. We're really seeing a lot of crossover between segments. And that's kind of really interesting. And I think where marketing is really going towards with younger consumers.
That's exciting. And in that vein, you recently spoke at South by Southwest in a session titled, "When Brands Are Strong Hispanic Allies, We All Win." Fascinated by that. It discusses the failure of big brands to pay attention to the Hispanic community. What are some of the key points from your presentation, and how can brands be better allies to that key community?
What I try to really propose in the presentation is what are some areas that we can tap into that are really important to the majority of Hispanic consumers. Again, not a monolith, but really kind of try to, carve out some areas where we can support this community in areas that are important to them. One of them was generational wealth. Another area is, kind of a crisis in mental health that we're seeing in this country, and that all that comes with it. And another area was, intersectionality. Again, I think it's really important that we start thinking about not just Hispanics or Blacks or Caucasians, but about how they intersect with each other. And in particular, in the LGBTQ plus market, we see a lot of intersection because the numbers, particularly in the Gen Z generation, are much higher. So Hispanics have an over-index in being also part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Are there any brands that are doing it right that you'd like to cite, perhaps how they're going about it or some of the results that they've seen?
I think there's definitely a few brands that have done some work around sort of generational wealth. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of statistics and research around the fact that most of the minority populations in this country start out behind their Caucasian counterparts because there isn't generational wealth built into their families. So they have a harder time doing things like going to college, buying their first home, any of these types of things. And also as business owners, a lot of times minorities have a bit of they're a little bit step behind. And so one of the things that I have seen major brands doing, for example, like a Target, they go out and they actually support small business owners and make sure that there's enough financial support for, minorities that are trying to, sell their products, build new brands, things like that. So I have seen some work in that space.
Gen X consumers make up about 65% of the U.S. workforce and have significant purchasing power as they continue to go through the timeline. but they are often overlooked by marketers. With so much attention on Gen Z, how are marketers potentially missing out on this quiet generation, and what can they do to better meet their needs?
Think Now, this research company, actually put out a study about Gen X, and that's what I talked about. And I think it's really interesting because we are very much the middle child, right? We're the small generation in between these behemoths, right? The boomers and millennials. And so everyone just sort of forgets about us. And yet we are very much driving financial growth right now in this country, and, have the majority of the purchasing power because of where we are in our life cycles. So I think, there's small things we could be doing all the time to just, if you do think about it in the terms of the middle child, like the Marsha of the Brady Bunch, right? All she wanted was attention. All she wanted was to be like, you're not invisible. You're here. We know you're here. We know you're maybe not as exciting as millennials and Gen Zs, and there's not enough memes about you as there are about boomers, but there's things we can talk to you about that are really important.
It's an understatement to say that digital marketing changed during and underwent an unprecedented change during the pandemic. What have you learned as the CEO of Orsi as a result of the marketing pivot and the hard jump into digital marketing? And are there any new technologies or trends that you're excited about on the horizon that you see impacting marketing in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I feel like we were already very much down that path when the pandemic hit. And I like to say, and I'm very proud of our agency, our team really pulled together. And I think our transition to the virtual space was pretty seamless, considering that, it was such a shock to the system. But I think, it's been really great. That's the upside, right, of all of this, is really seeing marketers and just consumers embrace certain things that we think long-term will probably be better for everybody. I think for right now, social media is obviously it's a touchy thing because it's had such an incredible boom and such an incredible impact on all of our lives as consumers and as marketers. But there's so much of a downside that we're now seeing. So that's probably the thing that, we keep our eyes closest on in terms of changes here at Orsi. We're always trying to see what's coming next. As TikTok booms and the wars continue, right? Between the Facebook, Instagram, Meta world and, what's happening next. We're trying to see, okay, what happened to all the little guys that sort of are still there on the sidelines, and, what's next, right? I think obviously gaming, so Twitch and anything in that area is really interesting. And I think to a certain degree, a lot of people are scared of it. They don't, it's very different. But being a mom to a child who plays a lot, I can see where that's going. So I think definitely I'm very interested to see how the gaming world continues to evolve. And similarly, the metaverse, although not necessarily in the Facebook meta version of it, but just, and how it already exists and how it will continue to evolve.
If there just were one or two pieces of advice that you would give a brand or someone, a digital marketer who might be watching this, what would that be as far as trying to appeal to the needs of the Hispanic communities and do it in a way that makes it meaningful to them?
I think the number one thing is listen. We learned so much from social listening. When I started in the industry, we had to go to focus groups and do very complicated research studies to try to glean insights from our consumers. And now all you really have to do in large part is pay attention online, because people tell you what they like, what they don't like. And you can really follow trends very easily and pick up on insights. And I think the biggest mistake is assuming that the Hispanic market in the U.S. is a monolith. It's very, very diverse, very different, like I mentioned. And so listening to what are some of those unique insights and really trying to bring those to life, I think is a great way to connect.
What is the best professional advice that you've ever been given or heard?
It's not life and death. I think early on in my career, I learned from a mentor of mine to kind of laugh and try to really enjoy the work, because sometimes, while it is serious and we are doing important things many times, we also have to learn to just remember that, we are in this because we enjoy what we do, hopefully, and that there's always a way to come back to that.
Is there a book, a blog, or perhaps a podcast that you would like to recommend to our viewers?
I've been listening pretty frequently to Pivot. It's a podcast, and I think that it's a really interesting take because it talks a lot about technology and the financial repercussions and just kind of global repercussions of the technology markets. And so I think it's very interesting as marketers and as digital marketers specifically, because it's a different perspective on what's happening, right? What are the industries that are coming, that are growing? What should we be paying attention to? What are the downsides of some of this technology, et cetera? So I find that very interesting.
My guest today has been Marina Filippelli, CEO of Orsi. Marina, thank you so much for being here. It's been outstanding, and I've truly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.